In a quiet, tree-lined neighborhood where the houses were large and the lawns perfectly manicured, lived a girl named Emily. Emily was the kind of girl who seemed to have it all. Her parents were wealthy, her home was luxurious, and her future was carefully planned out. She attended the best all-girls schools, where the rules were strict and the focus was solely on academics. Emily was smart, polite, and obedient, everything her parents wanted her to be. But there was one thing missing from her life, something she didn't even realize she was curious about until it walked right into her world. Emily had never been around boys. Her schools were all girls, her friends were all girls, and even her extracurricular activities were carefully chosen to keep her in a bubble of safety and focus. But as she grew older, Emily began to wonder about the world outside her bubble. She would see couples holding hands on the streets or watch romantic movies in secret. And her curiosity would grow. What was it like to talk to a boy? To be close to one? To feel what everyone in those movies seemed to feel? One summer holiday, everything changed. Emily's aunt, who lived a few houses down, had a visitor, a boy named Jude. He was her aunt's nephew, visiting from out of town. Emily first saw him while she was watering the plants in her front yard. He was tall, with messy hair and a smile that made her heart skip a beat. She quickly looked away, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. She had never spoken to a boy her age before, and the thought of it both thrilled and terrified her. Jude noticed her too. He thought she was beautiful, with her long hair and shy smile. Over the next few days, he found excuses to walk past her house, hoping to catch her eye. One afternoon, he finally worked up the courage to say hello. Emily was so surprised that she almost dropped her watering can. They started talking, and before long, they were spending hours together every day. Emily's parents were busy with work, and her little brother, Jamie, was too young to understand what was going on. To him, Jude was just another person in the neighborhood. But Jamie was curious. He noticed how his sister would leave the house every afternoon and come back late, her cheeks flushed and her eyes sparkling. He tried to tell his mother about it, but she was always too busy. "Not now, Jamie," she would say, barely looking up from her laptop. "I have work to do." Jamie didn't give up, though. He promised himself he would tell her eventually. He just didn't know how to explain what he was seeing. Meanwhile, Emily and Jude's friendship was growing deeper. Emily felt like she could talk to him about anything. She was open and honest in a way that no one else in her life was. One day, as they sat under a tree in the park, Jude asked her a question that made her heart race. "Have you ever thought about, experimenting?" he said, his voice casual but his eyes serious. Emily didn't know how to respond. She had thought about it, of course. She had so many questions about relationships and intimacy, things she had never been able to ask anyone. But the idea of actually doing something about it was both exciting and terrifying. She didn't say anything, but Jude could see the curiosity in her eyes. The next day, Emily decided to talk to her mother. She didn't know how to bring it up, but she knew she couldn't keep it to herself anymore. "Mom," she said nervously, "there's something I need to tell you." Her mother looked up from her work, her expression a mix of surprise and concern. "What is it, Emily?" she asked. Emily took a deep breath. "I've been spending time with a boy," she said. "His name is Jude, and he's been helping me understand things. About relationships and other stuff." Her mother's face turned pale. "What do you mean, other stuff?" she asked, her voice sharp. Emily hesitated. "He said he could help me experiment. If I wanted to." Her mother stood up, her hands trembling. "Emily, do you have any idea how dangerous that is? You don't even know this boy. What were you thinking?" Emily felt tears welling up in her eyes. "I didn't know what to do, Mom. I wanted to understand." Her mother took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "We need to talk about this. But first, I need to know everything. Where is this boy? How long has this been going on?" Emily told her everything, her voice shaking as she explained how she and Ethan had met and what they had been talking about. Her mother listened in silence, her expression growing more and more serious. When Emily finished, her mother sat down, her face pale and her hands clenched into fists. "This stops now," she said firmly. "You are not to see that boy again. Do you understand me?" Emily nodded, tears streaming down her face. She felt a mix of relief and guilt. She knew her mother was right, but she couldn't help feeling like she had lost something important. The next few days were tense in Emily's household. Her mother kept a close eye on her, making sure she didn't leave the house without a valid reason. Emily's father, who had been mostly absent due to his demanding job, was filled in on the situation. He was furious, not just at Emily, but at himself for not being more involved in her life. "How could we let this happen?" he asked his wife one evening, his voice heavy with guilt. "We were so focused on giving her the best education, the best opportunities, that we didn't even notice she was struggling with something so basic." Emily's mother sighed, rubbing her temples. "We thought we were protecting her. But maybe we sheltered her too much. She didn't know how to handle this because we never taught her." Meanwhile, Emily felt like a prisoner in her own home. She missed Jude, but more than that, she missed the freedom to explore her feelings and ask questions. She felt like her parents didn't understand her, and in a way, they didn't. They had grown up in a different time, with different values, and they had no idea how to navigate the complexities of teenage curiosity in the modern world. One afternoon, Emily's little brother, Max, finally got his chance to speak. He had been trying to tell his parents about Emily and Jude for weeks, but they had always been too busy to listen. This time, he marched into the living room, where his mother was sitting with a cup of tea, and blurted out, "Mom, Emily's been meeting a boy. I saw them together in the park." Emily's mother set her cup down slowly, her expression a mix of surprise and frustration. "Jamie, we already know about that. But thank you for telling me." Jamie frowned, confused. "You knew? Then why didn't you stop her?" His mother sighed, pulling him into a hug. "We didn't know until recently, sweetheart. But we're handling it now. You did the right thing by telling me, though. Always remember that." Jamie nodded, feeling a little proud of himself. He didn't fully understand what was going on, but he knew he had done his part. As the days turned into weeks, Emily's parents began to have more open conversations with her. They realized that keeping her in the dark had only made things worse, and they needed to guide her rather than control her. One evening, her mother sat her down for a heart-to-heart talk. "Emily," she began, her voice gentle but firm, "we know we made mistakes. We thought we were doing what was best for you, but we see now that we didn't give you the tools you needed to navigate the world. We want to change that." Emily looked at her mother, her eyes filled with a mix of hope and skepticism. "What do you mean?" "We want to talk to you about relationships, about boundaries, and about making smart choices. We can't shield you from everything, but we can help you understand what's important and what's not. And we want you to feel like you can come to us with your questions, no matter how uncomfortable they might be." Emily felt a wave of relief wash over her. For the first time in weeks, she felt like her parents were truly listening to her. I didn't know how to talk to you about this stuff," she admitted. "I felt like you wouldn't understand." Her mother nodded. "I get that. And I'm sorry we made you feel that way. But we're here now, and we want to help." Over the next few weeks, Emily and her parents had many difficult but necessary conversations. They talked about relationships, consent, and the importance of respecting oneself and others. Emily began to feel more confident in her ability to make smart choices, and she realized that her curiosity wasn't something to be ashamed of, it was a natural part of growing up. For Jude, Emily decided it was best to keep her distance. She realized that while he had been kind and open with her, their relationship had been based on curiosity rather than genuine connection. She didn't regret meeting him, but she knew it was time to move on. The summer came to an end, and with it, Jude returned to his hometown. Emily didn't see him again, but his presence in her life had left a lasting impact. She had learned valuable lessons about trust, boundaries, and the importance of open communication. Her relationship with her parents had also changed for the better. They were more involved in her life, more willing to listen, and more understanding of her. One evening, as Emily sat on the porch with her little brother Jamie, she noticed him staring at her with a curious expression. "What?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. Jamie hesitated for a moment before speaking. "Are you still mad at me for telling Mom about Jude?" Emily smiled and ruffled his hair. "No, Jamie. I'm not mad. You were just looking out for me, and I appreciate that." Jamie grinned, clearly relieved. "Good. Because I don't like it when you're mad." Emily laughed, feeling a sense of warmth and gratitude. Despite everything that had happened, her family was still there for her, and that was what mattered most. As the school year began, Emily found herself in a new environment. Her parents had decided to transfer her to a co-ed school, believing it was time for her to experience a more balanced social life. At first, Emily was nervous. She had never been to a school with boys before, and the thought of it was both exciting and intimidating. But as the days went by, she began to feel more comfortable. She made new friends, both boys and girls, and found that she could navigate her curiosity in a healthier, more constructive way. One day, during a class discussion about relationships and boundaries, Emily raised her hand to share her thoughts. "I think it's important to ask questions and be curious," she said, her voice steady and confident. "But it's also important to respect yourself and others. And if you're ever unsure about something, it's okay to talk to someone you trust." Her teacher smiled, clearly impressed. "That's a very mature perspective, Emily. Thank you for sharing." Emily felt a sense of pride as she sat back down. She had come a long way from the girl who had been too afraid to ask questions, and she knew she still had a lot to learn. But for the first time in her life, she felt ready to face whatever challenges came her way. The moral of the story: curiosity is a natural part of growing up, but it's important to approach it with caution and responsibility. Open communication with trusted adults can help navigate the complexities of relationships and boundaries. Mistakes are inevitable, but they can be valuable lessons if we learn from them. And true growth comes from understanding ourselves and respecting others.